name is Tracey Cook, and welcome to the podcast series Victim to Victory. This series gives a voice to those that have overcome obstacles in all forms, that dare greatly to share their real stories. Amazing humans, just like my next guest, that has seen hope, risen above those adversities to become victorious, that now support and inspire others to do the same. And today we are giving a voice to Emmitt A. Savannah III from the US. And welcome to Victim to Victory, Emmitt.
Thank you so much for having me, Tracey.
You're welcome. Now, I want to just share a little bit about you before we delve into your story and how you're helping the world and be a thought leader and a change maker. I love connecting with people like you. And here's just a little insight, a little snippet, because we're going to share where to connect with Emmitt as well. And Emmitt has a deep passion for leadership and encouraging others, and enjoys forming bonds with the people he meets. Emmitt is passionate about improving others' quality of life and desires to share his experience and knowledge with the world through writing and speaking. Emmitt's faith as a Christ follower is not something he takes out of his pocket just on Sunday. I love that. And his faith is demonstrated through how he lives, forming interpersonal relationships by listening to and encouraging others, being kind and patient, seeking understanding and exercising as much wisdom as possible in every situation and decision. My Lord, there's nothing that this man can't do, honestly. I've only known him for a short time. I've been following him for a while, and he is amazing. And he also enjoys adding value to people, and you're going to get that delivered to you today. And whatever he puts his hand to work on, including his family, his friends, colleagues at his workplace, and whoever happens to cross his path in either a moment or a series, and I love that, or a shared experience. Emmitt, where does your story start?
Well, thank you for that introduction. I think my story really starts the day I entered this earth. And that's where all of our story starts, when we come into this earth. And, it was about, I would say a little over 4 to 5 years ago, where I started kind of a downward spiral. And just to kind of give you a bit of a background, so I have a wife and two children now, and I working a full-time job, and I was also a part-time music director, and so there was a lot on my plate, and so just a lot of things to carry, a lot of responsibility and all of that. And so it just kind of started because there were so many expectations that I had placed on myself, and that I felt like were placed on me. And not just my current circumstances at the time, but even, I mentioned, my story starts when I was born, because just through my upbringing in life, you could say I was kind of considered that golden child in a sense. And when you kind of grow up with that sort of identity placed on you, there are certain unvoiced, I guess, expectations that are put on you that I think aren't meant to, or unintentionally, I would say, placed on you. And so it was, trying to be the best, and Emmitt is this, or Emmitt is that, and these things that were sort of unintentionally placed on me, that really kind of fed into my identity. And when I met those expectations, or strived to meet them, and did, there was a sense of fulfillment and accomplishment, and a reward, and just kind of this approval that I just continued to sort of seek out and stretch for. And so that was just kind of where I started to form that identity, is like, I needed approval for what I do. So I have to perform, I have to meet the expectations, so that people approve of me, so that people like me, or or so that I'm validated in this life. And so that was what I gave the most weight and worth to as I was growing up. And that just trickled into every area of my life. As a husband, I felt like I had to be the best husband. I had to do all these things. And when something wasn't right, or my wife didn't, she wasn't, I felt like she wasn't satisfied with something, or I just didn't meet my own expectations of what I should be doing as a husband, I felt like a failure. As a father, I felt like I should be doing X, Y, Z, A, B, C, all the things. And when I missed the beat or missed out on something, I felt like I failed in that part. I mentioned I was a part-time music director. Whenever, we missed the note or something didn't happen, during the platform, work ministry time, but we're playing and singing, I felt like I failed. I mentioned at work, and the positions I held there and still hold there, whenever I just didn't meet the mark, or, there was a disgruntled employer colleague, I felt like I failed. And so, I had all these things that I was trying to do so perfectly because I was really seeking out approval. And I didn't know that functionally. I didn't realize that until later. And so I just internalized this, oh, I failed here, I failed here, I failed here. And what happened was I took that I failed into I'm a failure. And that's the identity I started to take on. And that had just terrible consequences. And so I just slowly over time, like, man, I keep failing and internalizing that as I'm a failure, I'm a failure, I'm a failure. And so at that point, because I wasn't getting that approval that I needed, that was really kind of just set up, that sort of mentality for me just set up since I was born, just kind of growing into that organically. I really just lost a lot of passion for life. I lost hope. I lost the sense and direction of who I was and who I am, and really my purpose. My purpose was to functionally, what was happening for me was to live for the glory of others, right? So wanting to receive that approval. And when I just internalized these things that I didn't meet as I'm a failure, well, it wasn't coming to me. And so I was like, what's the point? What's the hope? I'm only disappointing all the people in my life. And more importantly, I'm disappointing myself. And so over time, that just really affected the way I led my home, led my children, led my wife, led at work, just in all of that, because my identity had just been crushed. And so it was just really unhealthy. And what that led to was really just me to look to suicide at that point. And I remember the day I was on a work trip and I thought to myself, because I had been contemplating how I was going to exit this world. And my wife nor I were pretty sure that I was, I knew I was coming back, but I thought I was going to be coming back in a body. So she just didn't know which condition I'd be coming back in. But and that was just kind of where we
Emmitt,
were.
did your wife pick up on this then? Did she know that you were struggling with this?
Not initially. I think just, as men, we just we bottle it up and just deal with it, but it just really manifested in terrible ways. At the end, when I say at the end, just kind of at that point where when I took that trip, she was aware I was really struggling, and I was just kind of in torment there. And so she did know that was a possible reality that she was going to have to face, in the next coming days. And she didn't know whether she was going to be a single mother, a widow,
Wow.
or if I was going to come back. And I wasn't sure myself either. And so that was just the lowest point I've ever been in my life. And so just, really, I'm like contemplating, thinking, okay, this is my strategy to exit. And that's where I was. So that's where it really, that's kind of where the story, what I'm writing about and talking about, kind of came really out. Obviously, I'm here today, so that didn't happen. So so there was some triumph and overcoming in those dark moments for sure. So,
how did you shift your mindset when you said that's your lowest point? You didn't know if you were coming back or not. Your wife must have been absolutely beside herself and so worried. What was the one or was it many things that you thought, no, this isn't the way? Is there something that
Yeah.
stood out to you?
So yes, good. That is the pivotal question, right? So I'll start with this. I took this test, or kind of an assessment test to find out what my top strengths were. And my top one is responsibility, which kind of makes sense of all the things that I've got going on, right? And I just, just take on all these things and want to do them well. And as I was sitting there in the hotel room contemplating, when and where and how in that moment, and it's clear as day, why didn't I ever think of this? And thinking, if I leave this world, things are actually way worse off, because I'm thinking I'm doing everybody a favor by leaving. And in fact, I'd really be doing a disservice and leaving a lot of scars and emotional pain and hurt. And I'm like, I would have been responsible for that. I would have done that to people, and most importantly, my kids and my wife. And so it was realizing that to say, this is very irresponsible. And so I kind of like use my strength, right, to help me out of that weakness, in the sense to say, that's not very responsible for me to do that, and just thinking how selfish and cowardly that would have been. And it would, I guess, and maybe people have had that thought, but for me, I was just like, that was a switch. And I wasn't like, oh, I'm now triumphant. It was just, this is not the answer. Like, this can't be it, for me to do that. I said, I've got to fight for my wife. I've got to fight for my children. I've got to fight for myself, because this is not it. This is just, and not to belittle, because I know people have suffered through that. People have had loved ones to do that, and so I say that was cowardly, but I'm very sensitive, right, to how people feel when this subject comes up. And again, this is just from where I am at, so I can only tell it from where I was. And so it was just that initial thought that just kind of like said, no, you need to do whatever you need to do to fight this. And so that's when I started to look just very introspectively to kind of determine, like, where did this start? That was the question, like, why am I here? Like, what has happened in my life that I'm at this point? What have I been? Because I'm like, wait a minute, I've got this hope that I'm supposed to have in God, but yet I'm here. Like, this doesn't add up. Like, there's something is not making sense to me. And so that's when I started to just do a deep dive within, looking inward. And I tell people, you don't know what you don't know. So I need help to figure out what it is that I don't know. And so that's what I did. My wife and I, we started seeking, like, some just some counseling, and just people just to kind of speak into our lives and to help us figure things out. And so that's what we did. We had just some people that we trusted, some external voices that we really trusted and knew, okay, these are sound people who have wisdom to really help help us. And not just me personally, but just even in our marriage, because again, all this stuff was bleeding into every area of my life. And that was just kind of this coming really back to the root of my identity and who I was. I'm placing it in other people for their approval. And that's going to be fleeting, because people aren't going to like you. Not everybody's going to like you. And if that's where your fulfillment is coming from, or whatever it may be, if it's in the amount of money you make, or if it's in power, if it's in control, if it's in, the comforts of life, those things are not going to sustain you at all. For a moment, they may.
So you sought your worthiness and your validation in the opinions of others, almost like a people pleaser. Would that be right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And it was
massive.
it was to the point, like, so I was satisfied to really just to the point that they were satisfied. So it was just based off of that, and felt like, okay, if I did a good job, if they felt like I did a good job, then I did a good job. And to the degree that they approved was to the degree that I was fulfilled.
Wow. And
So
I do want to lead into something that is quite transformational, if you don't mind as well. And it
sure.
is about the book about leading identity. And it is actually titled Journey to a Purposeful Identity and Become a True, Fulfilled, and Lasting Leader. So this
Yes.
ties into your story so much. Talk me about the process of how you got to write this book. I'm guessing it's based on this experience that you've had.
Yes, it really was. And I mentioned, my wife and I kind of just going and seeking some external voices through counseling, just through just talking really ourselves to each other about where we were. And so as we got to a healthier place, as people, were just speaking to our lives and helping us realize, it really, for me, just personally, how I was functionally living, because I didn't understand it, or know. Well, I wasn't aware of what I was doing. I just knew that I was doing it. I couldn't articulate it. But once I articulated it, I saw how unhealthy that was. And I was able to kind of displace that, and started to change there, and then come to this sort of place of being more fulfilled. And it just was a process. It was a journey, and it was never just like, oh, it was, a flip of the switch and now I'm there. And on the cover of the book, you see the guy kind of really just kind of trekking up this mountain to this light. And I was like, man, that's so representative and captures just the journey of identity. And like, we have to, in a sense, lead ourselves, lead who we are, or understand who we are and what we're placing our identity in, and kind of lead that, and kind of like take the reins on that. And so the book really comes out of that story. And then I just really provide like some of the tools and the principles and the application, that that I started to become aware of. And like, you mentioned the keywords like validation and, security. What are those things in, and approval, and all of that, what we're putting our worth into, which is really, that's what worship is, right? Everybody worships something, whether you're, a believer of, in faith or not, you're putting your worth into something. There's something that you're drawing from to say, this is what validates me, this is what I'm secure in, this is what I have purpose in. And and I loved how you had written in your one of your things, you talked about like how, your passion, right, is helping or giving your audience direction, right, and the transformation to find their purpose, and stepping into their story, using their storytelling and strategy and speaking. So the book, just really gives those tools and those things, and just through my personal story, just full transparency, and how they can walk that out and not have to really go through the school of hard knocks like I did. So that
Essential resources.
yeah.
So we all talk about this being authentic, right? But we find that being the most hardest thing, to be our true authentic self without seeking others' approvals or validation, and just
Yes.
know our own worth and own it. And when we talk about authenticity, I don't know if you agree, Emmitt, but authenticity to me is and Brene Brown says it, if you're not in the arena getting your ass kicked, she's not going to listen to the people in the cheap seats. And it's something along those lines. I've just given you the Aussie version. But
Sure.
when we talk about authentic, it's actually truly looking in a mirror and kind of saying, you know what? You do deserve this. You are worthy. You are appreciated.
Mhm.
And it's okay to fall down. Just get back up again and keep going. You don't need anybody's approval. So when you think of authenticity, Emmitt, what do you think of when you hear that word?
That's a good question. I think, it's like authentic. It's real. It's genuine. It's raw. And there's no there's no pretense of like perfection. And so I think that's being really true and vulnerable with who we are. You know, you think of, you know, any kind of value, anything, you know, value, like, man, this is the authentic version, you know, this is the real, this is the true, this is what it is at its core and at its element. And I would say this too, because when you look at a person and say, this is the authentic me, or this is the authentic Tracey, or our authentic Emmitt, I think there also has to be a realization that there are life experiences that have shaped that. There are ideologies that have shaped that, that are external influences as well as our own internal influences on what that means. And so I think there's a lot of things that come into the picture when we look at this is who we are. And something I talk about in the book is like, there are also lies that we have believed and taken on in ourselves. And I think those have to be really evaluated to say, because those lies aren't your authentic self. Like you have taken that on that is not true. You have placed something on yourself that is not true, that others have maybe said about you that you believed. And I don't think that that's a part. I mean, that's perhaps how you're functionally living, but I think those things have to be rooted out and evaluated, and just like, you know, like the weeds, you need to put some weed killer on that, because that's choking your true authentic self, you know. And so get those weeds out and let your true self blossom, and how you were really created to be, and who you know, that purpose, right, of what you were, how you so eloquently put it. So that's what I think about when I think authentic.
No, I loved how you just delivered so many golden nuggets there, Emmitt, because being authentic is the most freeing, you know, and I think you said it so well and touched on it a few times about it's how we're socially conditioned, right? It's our family or our parents or our environment or our peers or that have put us in that box and said, you are this. So you think you have to play that role, you know, until a point where you go, you know what, I never wanted to play that role. I never was that person. And you kind of break free, and then your true authentic self, and then you're criticized for that. So I think if you're going to be criticized for being what you're not, you might as well be criticized for being you.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
It does. 100%.
People are going to judge anyway, so you might as well be yourself and be judged.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh, I love it. No, you just delivered so many just light bulbs, absolute light bulbs, and leading with our identity and getting rid of that social conditioning and just and it's a journey. Where are you now in that journey? Because you've got this wonderful book, you've got a wonderful family, and I know you're inspiring many, many others. Where are you now in the journey?
No, that's great. I mean, I'm so much in a better place than I was. And I think so I guess I would say I'm in a much healthier place. That's for sure. And so I feel like where I was trying to get approval from others, that's not really something that is an issue for me at this point. Because I think I've come to realize where that identity for me is placed, and what really what is truly kind of the life-giving for me, and that's where, you know, I kind of take people on the journey that I took, and not saying, hey, you should place your identity in ABC, but I try to kind of in a strategic way show them, like, if it's in these things, here's what can happen, and leading them to kind of make that decision and that choice, because I can't make that for them. I can only kind of, you know, I'll lead you to water, but I can't make you drink it. So and you know, you have to make that decision. And so where I'm at today is I mean, it is a place of fulfillment. And like I said, this, you know, identity really bleeds into everything that we do, and I'm hugely passionate about leadership. And I, you know, when I say that word, people think, well, I'm not a leader, so it doesn't apply to me. I'm like, well, yes, you are. And I think everybody is a leader. You just kind of look at the really the essence of what that is. It's really just, influence. It's the capacity to really change or change. And so you could be leading yourself. That's a leader. You could just be leading one person. Whether it's if your father, you're a leader. Whether your mother, you're a leader. You're a, whatever you're doing, there's some way or somewhere you have influence over something or someone, leading them to something or leading them away from something. So that we're all in a sense leaders. And so but yeah, I would just say I'm, that place of like being fulfilled, and just lasting and just having, I think, a sense of purpose and being able to share that with other people, being able just to empower them and really add value to them, is kind of where I'm at today, and just what I am. I love to do that and show people like, hey, you are valued, you are seen, you are empowered, and you have a purpose. And I know there's struggles you have, and I want to help you see those. And so I think when we start taking what we have, and know the worth that we have, we can so much easily give that to others, but when you don't have that and don't see that in yourself, that's impossible to give away. So,
and it can hold us back from so much. And
yes.
what kind of message would you like to share with our audience today?
Yeah, one thing I would say, there's just really no better feeling than exuberantly living out your passions, walking in the identity really that you are purposely and intentionally both creating and realizing. And in that space, that's where you're able to lead effectively, fulfilled, and really as a lasting leader. And I said this, people say, you're not leading if no one's following, but I feel like that's false. You really need to lead yourself first before you can try to lead others well. And when you lead yourself in whatever way that may be, you will, and in fact, lead others away or towards something. And there was also a quote I'm trying to remember. So I might have to edit this because I'm trying to remember it. It was so good.
And I like it how you say leading them towards something or leading them away from something as well, because a lot of people view leadership as this big, loud extrovert that's going, come with me and hold the power and, follow me and I'll show you where to go. But I like how you actually said they lead you away from something as well. Those people that truly have your back and they go, you know what? I don't think this is a good idea. What do you think? This is, how can I help you not make the same mistakes that I and many others have done? How can I help you? How can I support you? How can I empower you or give you skills or resources or tools to stop you falling down those same ditches that sometimes we get caught up in with our belief system? We keep digging the same hole and digging ourselves out, So I really love that you touched on leading people away from something as well. And especially a lot of parents will resonate with that also. And just being a mother or a father or a brother or a sister, where we're looking after our siblings, we're looking after our children. We go, hold my hand if you're going to cross the road. That's leadership, right? That's a form of leadership for sure.
Sorry, what? Oh, my internet cut out for a second.
That's okay. That's okay. So when we talk about leadership and we're leading from the front, we're leading people away from things. And do you have any final words you want to share with our audience today?
Yeah, I'm just going to say, as we talked about, this identity part, I would just say, if just know who you are, know where you've come from, know where you're going. And so that does require just some introspection there to kind of jot down some things and ask those why questions. Well, why do I do this? Where am I getting that from? Because I tell people, if you don't know who you are, or like, so if you say, if I don't know who I am, I cannot know you. And so again, you that's just that, because if you don't know who you are, how can you try, or how can you understand and really know somebody else, because you're already looking at that person through a sort of a filtered lens. And then just lastly, and I took this from John Maxwell. He's one of my favorite leadership gurus. He said, basically, a leader who does not value themselves cannot value anyone else. And so what you don't already possess, you cannot give away. And that goes into any relationship, whether it's work, spouse, children, family, friends. So that's such a
powerful.
crucial part.
That's very powerful. And yes, definitely, John Maxwell, a leader in that space, a thought leader and a visionary, all there as well. Thank you very, very much for being brave to share your story. I know it's impacting many lives and leading identities, and getting us to step into our stories. We'll be sharing where to connect with you, Emmitt. You're so appreciated. And you can find the Victim to Victory podcast series on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, and our Facebook group. Please subscribe, share, and comment. Connect with Emmitt. Be the change that the world needs more than ever. And let me leave you with a message of step into your story, figure out who you are, and do it on purpose. Bye for now. Thanks, Emmitt.
Thank you so much, Tracey.